This is the CitizenLink Report.
If you find our insights helpful, would you support our video efforts? $500 buys an hour of studio time. And we usually don't use a whole hour, but it covers the crew, lights, cameras, all that. That means your gift of $25 or more goes a long ways. Just click on Donate. Thanks from all of us. Some apparently good pro-life news from the federal government. This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart, Shepard, along with Carrie, Gordon, Earl, who keeps track of bioethics issues for us. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Stuart.
Let's talk about these numbers. Are they reliable? What do they show?
Well, there's a new report from the federal government which tracks abortion statistics, how many women have an abortion in the United States, what are the demographics, what is their age, their marital status, and so forth. And for the first time in 15 years, we've seen a considerable drop in the number of abortions. It's dropped 5%, and these are numbers for 2009. And that represents the single largest drop in a decade. It also found the number of teen abortions has dropped. And that's important as well because we've also seen the teenage birth rate drop. And that's a good indicator. That indicates fewer teens are getting pregnant. Now, in this latest report from the Centers for Disease Control, there was a concerning note, and that is among the number of women who died in 2009, that was 2008. The number of women that died from legal abortion in the United States was 12, and that is a higher number than we've seen since about the mid-90s. That means about one woman a month in the United States is dying from a legal abortion, so that is highly concerning. You ask about the reliability of these statistics.
It seems like whenever we talk about these, you always have to footnote them a bit, that there are certain aspects that you need to be aware of when you look at the numbers.
Well, it's not mandatory reporting, and that means we get the best information that people volunteer to the Centers for Disease Control. There are at least 4 states that don't report, and one of those is California. And we know California has at least 200,000 abortions a year. So when you see the numbers from the Centers for Disease Control, and those numbers come out as they did just recently, know that that's not it. There are other abortions that are taking place in the states. However, the CDC report is really probably one of the best. It has more detail. It's done on an annual basis. So it's about the most reliable we can have, which is why we encourage there to be mandatory reporting of abortion. This is one of the most common surgical procedures, if you will, in the nation. Women submit themselves to this on a daily basis. And for us not to have reliable data to know what's going on at the state level so that we can track this is really not reasonable for this.
And you mentioned 2008, 2009. They're always running a few years behind with this because it takes a while to get the numbers together. So the most current numbers are up through 2009, correct?
2009 is what was just released.
Yeah. Now, you talked about the decrease, 5% or so. What's causing the drop?
Well, that's hard to tell conclusively. We can certainly look at things that are happening in the culture. I would look to 3 things, and the first would be the passage of state laws. The second would be education, and the third would be having pro-life options. When you look at state laws, we know that that has an impact. Since 1990, we've seen a 22% decrease in the number of abortions in states that have passed incremental laws like parental notice, informed consent, limiting Medicaid and public funding. So we know that that does have an impact. We also know, according to polling, Americans don't like abortion. Abortion's been around 40 years in January of next year with the Roe v. Wade. It's been around longer, but that's the legalized time. Yeah. And we know that during that time, Americans have not come to like it anymore. If anything, they like it less and want less of it. And Americans like these incremental laws, generally speaking, and like them even more when they know that it reduces abortion. I think education is a huge thing as well. The pro-life movement is not a quiet movement. It is a loud movement. It looks for every opportunity to talk about the value of the preborn child and the mother and the woman. And we have kept this at the focus of the nation's conscience. There isn't a candidate in this nation that is not asked about their position on abortion. We saw this with the 2 parties during the election, very clear distinctions. One party very pro-life, the other very pro-abortion. Yeah. So we know that that makes a difference. And I think finally, the pro-life options. We have hundreds of pro-life pregnancy centers across the country, many of which are helped by Focus on the Family's Option Ultrasound program, which puts ultrasounds and training into these medical clinics. What we've seen to date is 133,000 estimated lives saved by this effort, and that's more than 500 machines and training that have been put. So when you look at the education, the state laws, and the pro-life options that are out there, I would attribute this drop in abortion to those three things.
I remember a conversation I had with you probably a decade ago, and you said something that stuck with me, and that is that the advances in medical technology will make the nation more pro-life, and that's the ultrasound, and particularly we hear about 3D or 4D ultrasound. It gives a view we just didn't have before.
Well, we do, and I think that's why the ultrasound is so important. When you're thinking about a woman in an unintended pregnancy, she thinks abortion's her only choice. And if you think that's your only option, your back is really against the wall. And that's why the ultrasound is so important. It allows a woman to come face to face with the humanity of that preborn child that she's carrying. And once that connection's made, that makes abortion less likely. So when we talk about incremental laws, having laws that allow women the option of seeing an ultrasound before she has that baby, that's changed many lives and spared both the mother and the child.
Now, the way our government's set up, it's supposed to be difficult to pass things in Washington, but after the last election, pro-lifers across America took a look at D.C. and said, we're going to see things maybe pass in the House. They'll never get through the Senate, and perchance they do, the president's going to veto it because he's highly pro-abortion. Where do you focus your energies for the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's pretty much going to be a tug of war at the federal level, and we haven't seen a lot of activity there since George W. Bush was in office, passage of the partial birth abortion bill, the Born Alive infant protection. We did have a slew of federal laws that were passed under that second Bush administration. I would encourage people to keep their eyes on the state legislatures. That's where we've really seen our best opportunities. We have seen in 2011 a really bumper crop of pro-life laws that were passed, and we talked about that on an earlier report. These are some novel approaches like the ultrasound bills, banning late-term abortions based on fetal pain. We've got enough pro-life majority legislatures out there to keep moving forward that good, solid, incremental legislation that does save lives, and it keeps, again, the issue of abortion on the conscience of the nation. So I would keep our eyes on the state legislative opportunities and keep pushing those.
And a good way to learn about that is either through, we have a network of 30, 35 state-level family policy councils that would be keeping track of these things. There's a map on our website, CitizenLink.com, where you can see if there's one in your state, and also the National Right to Life has state affiliates throughout the country.
And Americans United for Life is another good site. They keep track of the legislation, so you can see the type of legislation that may be introduced in your state. So you can always go to CitizenLink.com for more information there.
All right. Carrie, thanks for keeping us updated on this and tracking all this. We do appreciate hearing from you. Now that we're past the election, I've been catching up on some of the email coming in. It's been good to hear your comments, your affirmation, and your criticism. You may always write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. We encourage you to pray for state legislatures around the country as they consider the pro-life legislation Carrie was talking about. Pray that they have wisdom and insight, and that the laws they write would be defendable in court, because that's where often many of them end up. Pray that they would have the clarity to write those in such a way that it can make it through that court challenge. And remember, stand tall and be heard.